Shanti. Welcome to this session of interview with the Raj Yogi. And our theme today is from being stuck to moving forward. Looking on in Instagram, but that's the theme, from being stuck to moving forward. So, as always, let's start with a reflection. Very often during the day, I'm in constant motion, performing a lot of actions, moving a lot through the day, attention a lot on the outer world, outcomes. It appears that I'm actually going somewhere. But when I stop the outer activity in moments like this and turn inwards, it might actually appear I'm a little stuck. Same thoughts moving through my mind, cycling through over and over again. Be a past situation, it could be an issue to resolve, over and over, stuck in a thinking loop. I could be moving so much externally, but completely stuck inside. I check if that's the case now. Is there one particular aspect, issue, focus that keeps pulling my mind over and over again? Maybe even creating heaviness or fear or anxiety in the mind. As an act of self-care, I have that interest to learn. How can I break the cycle? How can I become unstuck? How can I move into more productive thought? Open my mind to consider the possibilities. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Welcome to interview with the Raj Yogi. And so tonight's topic, from being stuck to moving forward. So I know the Instagram's title is a little bit, needs a bit of a correction, but from being stuck to moving forward. And the reflections, quite thought-provoking in terms of perhaps even what our ideas of moving forward is, what progress is. And it seems like maybe we have a battle inside of certain ideas of moving forward are actually quite visible. But when you were mentioning in the reflection that when I have a chance to pause, I can really see I'm actually really stuck. So what does it mean to move forward, spiritually speaking?
Very often in this particular spiritual study, Raj Yoga, we actually talk about a sign that one is moving forward. There's quite a few signs, the most obvious being peaceful. So we say Om Shanti a lot. More peaceful, but really more light, more cheerful, more light, less heavy, more simple. The mind is more free, less affected. So all these different signs that I'm actually progressing, that there's this mastery being restored. I'm less affected by what is going on around me, able to stay very light. So if those signs are not happening, then this is very useful feedback that maybe I'm a little stuck.
In terms of progress, though, we are really, I would say, this world of spirituality, the world of physicality. Would you say that it's quite different in terms of what it means to be productive, what success means, moving forward, and what kind of power is required in both of these realms?
What I like about Raj Yoga is that it's not intended to divorce myself from the physical world. It is all about enhancing, transforming how I move through the physical world, how I act and interact. But the shift is from the inside out rather than the outside in. So this connects to progress or outcomes or productivity that, again, our main objective is to be happy. So if I am thinking that external outcomes, meeting certain expectations externally, is a sign that I am progressing, that my happiness, my peace depends on those outcomes being met. And when they are, then I feel I'm progressing. Then this actually puts me in quite a vulnerable state. So Raj Yoga is about, let's move from the inside out. So always looking, I was thinking about this a lot, always looking at the self against my objective. And that's something that we can talk about, but in essence, it's a certain character or nature transformation. So that's my sign, my feeling, my attitude towards success is that character transformation is happening. So always looking at the self. And externally, it might look like things are going in a very odd direction. But what's suggested is that if I do this character transformation, there will definitely be changes on the outside in time. So it's not that saying that quantitative changes are bad, but we want them to be driven by quality changes inside.
And you mentioned about changes in time.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the piece that we often sort of forget? We're looking for changes, on a very surface level right away. And then when we don't see it, actually, I often hear many are very disappointed.
Yeah, I think this is compounded by the fact that we live in a very fast-paced world. So we don't not only want the changes outside, we want them yesterday. So if things don't happen in a certain time, then we're very frustrated. And if we stick to the method of inside out, things will happen outside eventually. But there's what we call instant fruit. So I'm not so dependent on those changes happening outside. Whatever happens will be good. But I get this sort of instant contentment or fulfillment from coming closer to this inner objective. That's fulfilling in its own right. One way that we talk about this is definitely we see this in fitness. Absolutely, souls want external changes immediately in fitness. So this is the sort of attitude or feeling definitely around, say, New Year's Eve, is I am going to drop 15 pounds in one day. And of course, that's not realistic, but that's kind of the feeling, and that's going to be a sign of success. It's so unhealthy, so unsustainable. We know that that's crazy. So what is more healthy is, okay, I'm going to look at a healthier lifestyle. The changes will be quite gradual. And in fact, initially, it might look like I'm going in the wrong direction. This happens quite frequently. The weight actually goes up as fat is replaced by muscle. So, but if I can enjoy the journey of just engaging in a healthier lifestyle just for its own sake, that's a wonderful sign of progress. And I just enjoy engaging in what is healthier and more beneficial. And I'm not so dependent on the outcomes. Whatever happens, it's fine. but I just enjoy for the sake of doing those beneficial or healthy changes in my life.
It's interesting about this aspect of looking for the visible changes, because as you're saying, things might actually be changing on in an inner sense. But this aspect of staying stuck, one might actually be seeing that the scene seems to be happening again and again, and they're actually trying to focus on some sort of um, inner progress, I suppose. And it could be quite deceiving. They're moving forward, but they think they're actually staying stuck.
Yeah, if we don't shift to some inner objects, or what we call intrinsic reward, inner objectives, then there's probably a lot of room to be deceived, especially with a spiritual study. There's a joke that very often souls will say, ever since I started studying Raj Yoga, things have gotten worse in my life. And what's actually happening is what was unhealthy is falling apart. So it looks like I'm not just stuck, but actually going backwards. But in fact, I'm moving forwards. Again, I need to really start to connect to internal transformation as signs of progress.
And we just want to check in for those on Instagram. I know we often have issues with audio, so please send a message if you find that our voices are too low. But there was something that came up in terms of this topic about staying stuck or moving forward, is about, and you had mentioned about it, are there times when my thoughts keep spinning around the same ideas? And, what does it mean to acknowledge something? And because I remember learning in the study that, in a sense, like, what does it mean to acknowledge something? Because something that could be a thorn inside, either you think about it too much, it gets bigger, but even when you speak about it, can actually get bigger. Maybe even when you're trying to address it, and so maybe it's not the right way of addressing it, actually gets bigger. So what does that mean to ignore it versus to address it? And could they be blurred and actually, just making things worse?
If there was a physical illness and there's symptoms, pain, fever, aches, whatever, I could say I'm facing the fact that I have a physical illness, and I just start to talk about the symptoms and go very deeply into the symptoms that actually make me feel quite heavy. So it's good to acknowledge, yes, there is an issue here, but then, Daddy Genki used to talk so much about there needs to be some sort of realization of what is creating those symptoms. And so there's some realization or understanding. I'm just kind of really just indulging, going very deeply into the symptoms, but there's not going to be any resolution because I don't understand where those symptoms are coming from. So the realization or the understanding is super important in being able to move things forward. So not just, we say, honestly, I'm just talking about, and this actually comes up with the old elephant in the room conversations. But so I'm saying, I'm acknowledging that there's these feelings, etc., but it actually can create even hurt or pain. If I don't come, as they often will say when in customer service type situations, that the customer is complaining about something, and that's great that they are identifying what is a problem. We always say, can you come with a constructive feedback? Like, to just keep going deeply into the problem and say this is honesty without any realization of what's required, what's actually going on, and what's needed for resolution. Not only can keep us stuck, but can cause hurt.
So maybe one needs to actually become more clear what it means to acknowledge something simply and what realization means, because I think that perhaps we think that talking about it is going to change things.
Again, I think this is something that would start to happen naturally if one's really interested in the spiritual journey, because it's so much about getting to the seed or the roots of things. So, because that's where, we've got these dying plants upstairs, and my thought keeps going to, I need to go underground and see what's going on with those roots. I think there's something wrong with the roots. That's just a natural sort of reflex for those involved in the spiritual practice. I don't just want to keep talking about how the plant's dying. That's not changing anything. I need to, okay, why? Why is this going on? Let's check what's going on underground, the roots and the seed of it. Then I think that's super productive.
What is the relationship then between, acknowledging something and needing to have some understanding? I know we had this example that it was, I believe, in the last Raja Yoga session, which we referred to in Soul Cafe, about the soul who has this iron deficiency, and she constantly is chewing these mints, knowing that she's chewing these mints. So there's a bit of understanding that came later. Oh, there is anemia. I've got pica. I'm chewing on these mints. But is there a connection between realization and understanding? Because let's say somebody is being really bothered and they recognize it's a self-worth issue, but is that really understanding? Because if feelings don't change, is it that there is no realization, or they're not getting attainments from the right place?
I think part of the realization or understanding is, okay, I see the problem, the symptoms. Okay, I see what's at the root or the seed. But there's a third piece, that I have a solution. Mm-hmm. And I'm able to apply that solution. Otherwise, again, we're just sort of frustrated. So, okay, she recognizes she has anemia. That's what's causing the pica. That's great. That realization or understanding, they're very, very close. But then the third thing, what do I do about that? If we really want to move things forward, what's the solution? So I have anemia. What will I do to address that? And actually doing it. And I know that sounds pretty obvious, but there will be perhaps some resistance or opposition inside from doing it. So then I need more understanding and realization to know that this is going on. So it's sort of constant, this clarity around the self. And this is what we call honesty, not just sort of saying there's a problem here, but really to appreciate what's at the seed of it. What is that construction or solution? And what's going to be required to apply that solution? All of those pieces are so productive.
Now, then, if there was no solution, or let's say I know the solution, but I can't apply the solution, but I recognize, I realize that there's an issue, then would you say then that doesn't get me far enough, that I will still get frustrated because I realize something, but I can't change?
I was really touched. I was watching a trainer with a client over the last few weeks. I just happen to train at times that I am just doing my own thing on the floor, and very touched by it. This particular client, I think, has been a bit deconditioned, some injuries. That always leads to a lot of fear or cautiousness around movement. But this client likes to dance. So the reason I'm saying is that if there is the recognition, okay, I'm not able to apply it, what trainers will do is they will create progressions. They'll create a bridge to get us closer and closer to being able to take on the solution. So yes, I'm being very clear that is a bridge too far, that solution right now. But I can create a bridge to that bridge and a bridge to that bridge. So it's very sweet because the client likes to dance. But again, if there had been a fall, there's going to be fear of falling. And so they actually have them hold on to the handles of these straps, this apparatus, and actually dance, holding on to this because they love to move. And it was very sweet to watch. It took away that fear. There's now a safety net. and they're able to, so it's this art, again, this clarity around the self. What will take me a step closer, acknowledging where I'm starting from, and what can I do here to take me a step closer to that, to fully embracing the solution, because we don't want any violence. Sometimes souls try to force themselves to do something because they know they should. That's what I have to do. That's the solution. And they just don't have the equipment initially to be able to do that. They need to progress towards it. And, it's like healing and just pushing too much too soon. So there's these stages of healing. And that's really important to move. Otherwise, again, I'm throwing myself further back. I'm re-injuring.
So this aspect of staying stuck or moving forward, it's interesting that just talking about it is not going to actually help. And I remember this is, I don't know, several years actually before being in this study, and I was actually with someone who was a previous supervisor, but I was hired into another position where we were actually, I guess you can say, colleagues. So I think it perhaps maybe created a bit of awkwardness anyways to begin with. But there was a point in time when this soul felt that I had said something to somebody who was higher up than us that was really threatening her position. And I never said anything, but I tried my best to talk with the soul, to really try to clarify, to try to make amends, to neutralize. It didn't do anything. It was not enough. And it stays with me because it made me realize that talking can really only get you so far.
So again, with Raj Yoga, which works so much from the inside out, so much from the seed, it's going to ask, what's going on at the seed? What are my attitudes? What is my awareness? What is my vision on the other? All of those have to be checked even before I come into sound. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I'm just sort of perpetuating, again, a cycle that already exists. Mm-hmm. Unless something really deeply changes within myself, I'm not showing up in a different way.
So when it comes to moving forward, what needs to happen inside with this lens of Raj Yoga?
I think, again, Raj Yoga always looks at the seed of things. So the deepest, and we were this morning remembering that little lilting phrase, as is my smriti, so is my vritti, as is my vritti, so is my drishti, as is my drishti, so is my kriti, as is my kriti, so is my shrishti, which might be totally meaningless to you, but the idea that smriti is awareness. That's the seed of it all. Again, often we look at the other end, the shrishti, which means world, outcomes, productivity, as things going on. But now we're suggesting at the level of awareness, the deepest level, are things shifting there? Because that will set very naturally a chain reaction in motion, very, very natural and automatic. From that awareness to attitude. Attitude is a huge block in keeping things stuck, whether it's within the self or with others. So how do I unblock that attitude? It even shapes the way I think and see. I need to check the awareness. So awareness can shift attitude. When attitude shifts, I see and understand differently. When I see and understand differently, I behave differently. And again, according to law of karma, that changes the outer world.
I had to write something down while you were sharing, because it made me realize, because we mentioned about yoga, that when we're just talking about moving forward, what is the role of yoga?
So when I'm in this, what we call spiritual awareness, it's going to naturally unlock capacities, which again, we try to put on from the outside. I should be more peaceful, I should be nicer, etc. But it's like putting wings onto a caterpillar and calling it a butterfly. There really isn't that transformation. So when I shift my awareness, and was really thinking about this with attitude, shifting the awareness also shifts what I belong to. And that's really important in terms of changing our attitudes and the capacities that are available to me. So yoga looks a lot, we use the word remembrance instead of yoga quite frequently. And remember means to belong to again, to be a member of again. So this idea in yoga, if I'm having this remembrance of the Supreme Soul, when I go into that experience, it completely shifts how I operate and what capacities are available to me. It's a very deep, deep shift. It's literally watering the seed of the awareness. That's going to set change in motion at quite a deep level, the level of vibration, which is not something we can fake. Can't say, I'm going to change my vibration now. That's something quite a deep shift within the self. And it has the most profound repercussions on our physical world as a change in vibration. Connecting to the Supreme Soul, this yoga, this belonging to that one. And we say belonging because it has to be a shift of reality, of paradigm. Sets in motion such a profound change within the self. And that moves things forward. It's like a tremor happening deep inside the earth. At first, it doesn't look like anything. It's so incognito, but eventually, incredible changes on the surface.
Can't awareness alone just change my vibration?
The problem is we're not coming as a blank slate. So although I can touch that awareness, experience it, there's so much rubbish and obstacles and old habits that are just blocking the whole thing. So the connection to the Supreme Soul melts all of those blockages and obstacles away. So I'm just free to operate spiritually.
It makes me realize that part of the reason what I was noting down was that perhaps maybe in ways we are using yoga or remembrance to try to change things out there.
Absolutely,
or change others.
Yeah. That's been our old relationship with God. Our former relationship with that being was to call out to them, send up that requisition list, God, make this happen. And it was always something usually outside. Make this happen. Even, and we say outside, we're including the body. So, if it's overcoming a disease, we call out to that one. We're including that with outside. It also includes skills of getting a job, any of these things. All of this we're including in outside. Whereas now I only want to use that being to move me back to my pure state, my original authentic state. That's it, because I trust that will set in motion so many benevolent shifts in my life. If I just shifted myself, if I just transformed myself or healed myself to my original state. So that's what I want to use that being for.
So when you share that, it's many shifts that happen in my life, is it that circumstances change, or is it that I change and how maybe I handle those situations would change?
Yeah, again, when I am with that being, the capacities I have available to me, how my mind even works, how my decision making works, all of that's going to change when I'm with that being. And so I will operate differently in those situations. So it's not even about having to change the situation, but changing how I respond to the situation, how I experience the situation will shift when I'm connected to that being.
Is communication useful or needed if one changes to that degree? Like, is it useful to point an elephant in the room or not?
I think communication is an art and it's essential, but it's an art that actually includes aspects deep inside. So I can speak to one person with a particular attitude and it sets something very different in motion than the attitude I have while saying the same thing to another person. One of the aspects or examples being used this morning was that when I have, because of my awareness and how I'm operating, when I have a very negative or critical attitude to someone, usually because, again, I'm holding on to the past, but when I have a critical or negative attitude towards, it doesn't matter what they do. They can be doing lovely things. I will only see it through the lens of that attitude. They don't do anything right. Oh, there they are doing this and that again. I don't even see the beauty of what they're doing. Whereas if I worship the ground someone else walks on, and they could be doing quite dysfunctional things, it's like I'm blind or I make excuses, right? So it's this inner filter, and that will affect the communication if I have that negative attitude towards someone. And I've had this happen. I think we all have. We can just feel that person is holding an attitude towards me. They're trying to say something nice, but it just doesn't, as we say, ring true, because we can feel the currents underneath. Whereas someone who has very beautiful feelings for me, they can come and correct me, and it will feel like love. You know, they're doing something so beneficial.
I think many probably feel that's quite rare.
Yeah. So it's really the incognito, what's going on underground is so powerful. And that's where we want progress to happen, is at that incognito underground level. Doesn't mean we hide ourselves in a closet until that's happened. We continue to act and interact, but we're maintaining the awareness. We're very tolerant and compassionate about how the speed that things change, but our intention or objective is always from the inside out.
I think sometimes we can see things in a pretty black and white way. Now we're like, okay, so talking about it, it's not going to help. And then we just throw that into the category where, okay, then let me just ignore it. Let me not acknowledge it because I don't know how to acknowledge it.
I think that, again, communication is an art, and it's so important, and it's multi-leveled from the very, very subtle to the very gross. And so I want to master this art of communication. I want to acknowledge where I'm at relative to that art. Absolutely. So this feeling of, okay, whenever I speak to this person, again, always looking at the self. Because sometimes the elephant in the room is, always pointing the finger to the other person. And in fact, I need to sort of look again at the self. I have a certain attitude towards that other person. That's, I actually think most of what shapes the elephant is my own attitudes, and this is so much really creating rigidity around how I see things. So I need to acknowledge all of that, take all of that into account as I'm communicating. And if there is a relationship there that's very healthy, then it's almost in an entertaining way. We're able to say, oh, goodness, there I go again. I remember once having, we've talked about before, but this bonding day at work. And up until that day, I think some of the team was really struggling with the leadership, their approach to leading and managing, etc. And then we had this bonding day in which we did personality typing, and we could really see what personality type each one on the team was. And it goes very deeply into how so there was a lot of understanding and realization that day. And it was so wonderful what would happen afterwards. If someone was doing something and I'd say, oh, you're being very gold now, we'd laugh about it, where before that wasn't possible. So this power of realization and recognizing even about the self, it made a massive difference. But that required creating a very safe environment. There was a very, good relationship, safe environment, so we're able to explore it, which we saw at the beginning of this organization, definitely.
I'm sure that when it comes to communication, it doesn't change when it comes to the self. So I was thinking about when it comes to acknowledging it within itself, so not ignoring it or suppressing it. What does that look like inside? Because that's where I was thinking about, is that okay, not to acknowledge it, like you don't write it down, you don't have a conversation with yourself or God, you just sort of, it just sits there and probably is a ticking time bomb, and you don't realize because you're just like, okay, there's no point in talking about it.
This again is a major art, to be able to see the self clearly. I want to learn that. I certainly don't want to avoid, because this is the seed of all unhappiness, is lack of self-understanding and self-benefit. This is the seed, nothing else. And so I really want to learn the art of looking at the self clearly through the lens of wisdom, of truth. This is such a we've spent so much time in self-deception. Now, the reason I'm saying that is even if we take something really obvious, physical movement, we see souls in general are very poor at being aware of what they're physically doing with the body. There's a mirror in front of them. They're given correction, but the correction, something's breaking down in terms of the correction being given and the implementation. It could be lack of ability, but so often it just appears that they're not aware of where the body is in space. So that's a very gross level, being very clear with what the body is doing. So we're talking about something very subtle. What am I, the soul, doing? What is my awareness? What are my attitudes? All this very subtle stuff. To have clarity in looking at that without ego and fear and desire constantly interfering, which just blinds us. It's quite an achievement to be able to see the self clearly. And I again quote Daddy Janki, I think she was brilliant at not just seeing herself very clearly, but because she could do that, she was very clear in looking at others, really having compassionate eye towards others.
You feel that the more I can actually really experience myself to be a soul, I can see myself clearly.
We call it the third eye, that it gives us the capacity to see what's invisible or incognito.
So that is seeing what is real in me and also seeing what is not real without judging.
Yeah, exactly. That self-deception can start to decrease.
Well, it's such a full topic. We are running out of time, but it's powerful because I do feel that our ideas of moving forward, something that quite frustrated. We were in a retreat and there were some questions that came up in that retreat, I recall, that it feels like perhaps souls can't even just experience from the soul. So finding other ways to try to grapple with their feelings, they can't experience this real sense of self. Or being stuck and they don't know I'm feeling stuck. And so we're always looking out if souls have questions on Instagram or YouTube, or if you have topics, please let us know. You're always welcome to type in the chat box. Otherwise, we will have a little reflection.
With one thought, in one moment, I turn my focus inwards, moving into my inner world, which sometimes feels like a very robust, tangled, very old tree inside. So many branches, so many leaves. And sometimes my focus is only on the branches and leaves. How to change this aspect of my life, how to change this interaction, this relationship. All of these micro details I focus on in my life. Always with the intention to move closer to happiness, to peace. But every tree is really shaped by what's going on underground. The roots and the seed. Although the pull is to go into the details, to go into the minutiae, the leaves, the branches, the twigs. If I want to heal the whole tree, sense would tell me, go to the seed. Look at the seed, the awareness I hold about the self. Is it healthy? Is it stable? Is it spiritual? Is it authentic? Is it connected to truth? What is eternal? I can fix the seed and the roots around the seed, the entire tree will benefit, will progress, and even produce fruit. That true happiness. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you for those who joined with us. Our next more interactive session are the Soul Cafes, which have moved to Sundays at 5 p.m. That's Mountain Daylight Savings Time, Calgary time. That means anything much more meaningful to you. In terms of upcoming registered courses, we do have the Raja Yoga full course in Hindi that's happening this weekend. So it's 2 weekends long. And you're welcome to visit the center's website if you wish to register for that. That is happening on site as well as online. Otherwise, our next online session, today is Tuesday, so our next online session is on Thursday, the experience sessions, which I feel it's at the heart of actually how to move forward. There's one thing to explore and have an interview about it. There's another thing to actually experience what it feels like to be a soul, what it feels like to belong to God. And so feel free to visit our website for other upcoming sessions. Thank you again for joining.